What would you do if you relied on government assistance to survive and provide for your family, but if you try to raise your income, then you lose the exact benefits that you rely on to survive? How do you get out of poverty when it feels like you're getting penalized for increasing your income? So, this is a situation that I have a very acute understanding of because we went through it not too many years ago. I, just like so many other people, lost their job. That was the main source and income for my family. So, immediately being unemployed, we went ahead and applied for benefits. Now, as a kid, my family was on food stamps, so it was something that I was familiar with. I knew that there were benefits out there, and I had some rough idea of what benefits that we might qualify for, but there's still this layer of like guilt and shame over you when you realize that you have to depend on society to be able to live and survive. And I kind of felt like, having been the main source of income, I really felt like I let my family down when I no longer was able to provide for my family in that way. It felt like we weren't doing our duty as parents to make sure our family was taken care of. When I lost that job, it was actually a really good opportunity for me to evaluate what I wanted for my career. So I happened to fall into this job by being placed there by a job placement agency. It was never my intention for to be there as long as I was, but I was there for around 11 years. And during that time frame, I remember reading an article of another woman at some other point in the company, how she had never intended to work there. And then, just because of the nature of the culture and the amazing benefits that they provided, she ended up being there like several years and ended up retiring. The point of the article was to showcase like how an amazing career she had, and she had set herself up really well for retirement, even though that was never her intention. But when I read that article, I personally felt like so disappointed that that was going to end up being me if I ended up staying in this career, because my family was relying on my income to provide and care for them, that I knew that I would never leave this job of my own accord. And I remember sitting there and just feeling like really disappointed, like I was seeing my future in my years ahead by reading this article and just being like, wow, what did I miss out on? So when I lost my job, it actually gave an opportunity for my husband and I to sit down and really talk together and say like, what it is that do we want for our family. He was very willing. He's like, let me see if my part-time job will take me on full time, and very thankfully they did, but it was still not to the same income level, and because of the amazing benefits I had through my previous employer to support our family in the same way. I was so incredibly grateful for my husband during this time frame because he really supported me and in validating the fact that I knew that I didn't necessarily want to go back into the same career field that I was in, even though it would have been really easy for me to get hired in that career field because it wasn't what I was passionate about or felt super fulfilled in. He was like, I'll go out and find a full-time job. We'll, figure out a way to support our family. You just take the time that you need to figure out what it is that you really want. He's always been really amazing. I'm so thankful that I have him as like my partner in life to be able to like go through these hard experiences with. During that time frame, we did have to get on government assistance, like I said, and it was like a source of shame for me because knowing like, oh, we should be able to provide, we have skills to be able to provide for our family, but also we know that this isn't really what we don't want to be on government assistance long term, but also like we know that this, by repeating the same career that we were in, we knew it wasn't what we wanted for our family or for us and what our future would eventually look like anyway. Sometimes I think that, and I'm speaking from my own experience too, that when people are on government assistance, it can feel very shameful because it's like you're taking from society. Well, in reality, a portion of every paycheck does go into the system to help care for people that need government assistance. So even though I felt pressured to get back into figuring out like how can we get off assistance as quickly as possible because it wasn't our desire to be on government assistance, it was also like realizing, okay, this system and support is set up here specifically to help people in very similar situations, that it's not meant to be a lifelong lifeline. It is meant to be a stepping stone to get you to where you need to be. When I kind of reframed it in my mind to think of it as like, okay, this is here, we've been paying into this system, for a large portion of our careers. This is here to help us while we go through this transition. We're using the system in the way that it is intended to be used. That helped me feel a little bit better to know like we're not going to be on it permanently. It's not a lifelong thing. By us being on it doesn't necessarily mean that we're giving up and giving up on all of our ambitions. It's just a transitional period. So that was helpful for me to kind of like think through. And I was able to use my time at home now, being careerless, being jobless, trying to figure out like what it is that we want. Do I really want to be a stay-at-home mom? Because that's what I had prayed for after reading that article. My desire is to be home, but I know that if you don't bring me home through means outside of my control, I'm going to be in this job until I retire, and I that's not what I want. So being at home really kind of gave us some time to determine like, okay, what job skills does my husband have that are available to him that he could go out and find a full-time position that would provide for us? Is there positions in our area that would provide for us to the level or means that we want for our family and our goals and aspirations and what it is that we want to be able to provide for our kids? And then what it is that do I want as an individual? Do I want to be a stay at home mom? Do I thrive as a stay at home mom? Do I want to work part time? Do I want to go back into the job field? And so this gave me opportunity to kind of test out all of those options that I had never had available to me before. Like I was always working full time. And then now this gave me the opportunity to say, like, do I like being a stay at home mom? I did not. It was not the best fit for me. I felt like I was going crazy. I tried working part time and that wasn't a good fit for me either. And, or at least I think because of the nature of the part time job. And so that really gave me an opportunity to evaluate what am I interested in? What am I passionate about? What am I really interested in pursuing? If I could pick any career field, any interests, what would be my ideal? What would that look like? Through all of that time frame of being able to have the support of government assistance to provide for our family, was it hard? Yes. Was it really challenging? Yes. Even with government assistance, there are still some really big financial stress factors on your family that can be really hard. Like I remember just like so many days looking at our budget, looking at what we had spent, looking at our outstanding bills, and we were never at a point that we couldn't pay for what we needed to take care of our family. But there were so many times where it was like we had to say no, that it was so financially stressful on us that I was like, I do not want to live my life like this. And after having lived in a situation where we had margin in our budget, it can be really hard going back down to a really low income level where now it's like you got to scrimp, you got to save, you got to watch every single penny to the nth degree to make sure that everything is taken care of. It was a high level of financial stress on me that I was like, I do not want to do this. Let's get out of this situation as quickly as possible. There was one situation that we had when we were going through that transition period. We had a really large medical bill, again, a circumstance beyond our control. Even with the insurance program that we had, it was not going to cover that medical bill. It would take us years to pay off. I did approach the hospital and talked with them to say like what options are available to us. And again, there was a whole nother level of like guilt and shame of like being in that situation and being stuck there and like not being able to provide or take care of the financial obligations that we found ourselves in a way that we had never experienced before. The financial advisor at the hospital, she had said something to me that was so comforting at the time that for anyone that may find themselves in a very similar situation, I think is really helpful to hear. She had said, we receive grants and donations, and we always every year have outstanding funds available to take care of outstanding bills for our patients, but we don't have enough applicants. And the way that their hospital program worked is based off of your income level, that you would a certain portion of your medical bill would be forgiven, or you would have extra time to pay. A portion would be forgiven, and then you would get extra time to pay your medical debt. And I just remember sitting there being so incredibly thankful that she had said that, because again, I'm sitting here in a place of like guilt and shame that we cannot pay our financial obligation. And because of the situation we were in, our medical bill was 100% paid for and forgiven. These programs are here for people, and the purpose is to help people that find themselves in those situations. And so, as someone that has walked through that experience, I am so incredibly grateful that there are programs out there to help people, because I have relied on them and have found them so incredibly helpful and beneficial to my family, so that way we could keep our head above water. Well, then what happens when you start actually making progress, but then you lose benefits? Because that's what we found ourselves to be in. 1 year, I had made from my part-time job just enough to push us over into another like income bracket that we lost a whole bunch of benefits, and then we were scrimping to another level because we no longer had benefits available to us because we were over by just a few $100s. And it felt so frustrating. We're doing as much as we can to get ourselves out of the system, and then it feels like we're being penalized by getting off benefits, but we don't make quite enough to be able to like push us over to the point where we have income to substitute the benefits that we were receiving. Because sometimes there's this juxtaposition of like, okay, I'm getting more benefits from government assistance to be able to provide for my family, but if I do it on my own, I'm not quite making enough to the full scale that they're providing, and then there's a deficit that can be really hard for some people. I'm just going to continually stay on government assistance and benefits because it's going to take too long to get us over the deficit to be able to get to a point where it makes sense getting off of assistance. So I can really sympathize for people that find themselves in that situation, because I have been in that situation before, and it is really hard and frustrating because it's like I'm doing everything I can to get off a system, but then I'm being penalized for trying to get off of a system that's here to help me, but it doesn't feel like it's here to help me. In our situation, we had decided like, okay, if we are no longer going to qualify for benefits, then let's as quickly as possible increase our income as much as we possibly can. And this did take time. It wasn't like it happened overnight. It took effort and time and planning and adjustments. And, sometimes it just takes like God lining up certain things so that way you can have these opportunities presented to you, but you also have to put in your own work to be able to allow those opportunities to find you. Like, you can't find a job if you're not out there applying for jobs, right? So I can really sympathize with people that have been there. And one of the things that we are trying to do now with our income is our kids were homeschooled, and we decided that we were going to put them in public school, which would allow both of us to go and find full-time work. That was one way that we knew we could immediately increase our income, because then we were both working two full-time jobs instead of one of us working full-time and the other one working part-time. The other thing that we did is my husband actually ended up creating his own business. So now he's bringing in extra money when he has availability and opportunity by pursuing something that he is passionate and good at and fulfills a need in our surrounding community that people would pay for. The other thing that we did to go ahead and increase our income, which has not helped us yet, is that I ended up looking for additional certifications and trainings in the field that I'm currently in now that will allow me to increase my profitability for my employer, but also give me more career opportunity in the new career field that I have entered. If you find yourself in a place where you are needing government assistance, those programs are there to help support people that find themselves in those situations. To get out of that system is really hard, and really there's a lot of like judgment and shame associated with that. So if you know someone that is in that situation, please just extend them grace. But also, if you are in a situation like that, I would encourage you to use as many benefits as you can to get yourself out of a situation where you no longer need those benefits. And it takes time, and it's a struggle, and it's really hard, but that's where budgeting and really knowing your financial options and your financial considerations, and there's a different level of financial strategy that comes with, okay, how do you manage your finances when you are on government assistance, and how do you scrimp and save as much as you can and then increase your income as much as you can, versus like when you have enough income and then making sure you're carrying over those skills from when were on low income to be able to save and reduce your expenses as much as you could to when you are on higher income. How can you manage your expenses so that way you are a good steward and manager of what you have, so that way you're not inflating your expenses to the nth degree and then living outside of your means just because you have more means available to you. So some of those skills that you may learn now or have now carry vary with you when you go into a higher, different income bracket. But I don't want to get away from the fact that it is hard, it is challenging, and it sometimes can feel like you are being penalized by trying to get ahead, but it is worth getting ahead. It is worth making sacrifices now so that way you can set your family up for a better success. And now, looking at where we are compared to a few years ago, I am so much more fulfilled and so much more happy with my career opportunities, where like my career field, and my husband too feels so much more passion and purpose because of what he is pursuing, that even though it was really hard, I'm so glad that we went through that whole adjustment and we took that time while we were on financial assistance to really determine what do we want our life to look like and what do we need to do to make it happen. And one thing I often kind of think about is that the older you are, the more people are impacted by your financial situation. If you are paying off your debt when you are young and single, the only person impacted is yourself because of the sacrifices that you're making. Whereas if you end up having kids later down the line and you're carrying all of this debt and you haven't figured out how to manage your resources well, the people that are now being impacted are you, your spouse, and your kids. And the older your kids grow, the more that they're going to be aware socially of where you are financially. Even if they don't know the numbers, they will be able to feel it. Not only am I thinking about my kids right now, but I'm thinking about the future that I want to have with my kids when I get to the grandparent age. I want to be in a place where then I can enjoy and experience my life by giving back to my kids, by giving back to my grandkids. I never want to be in a situation as a grandparent that I can't pour into your life because I'm too busy trying to set my own life up to be financially secure so that way I don't become a burden on my family and the people that I have left behind me because I didn't do all of the sacrificing in this point of my life. I hope that you leave this conversation, one, feeling encouraged if you do find yourself in a situation where you are relying on government assistance. It can be hard, but it can be done. And then, secondly, is if you know someone that is on government assistance, just extend them kindness and grace because I think that there's this very negative mindset of people that take advantage of government assistance. And when I say take advantage, I don't mean like manipulate the program, but I mean like actually use the program for what is intended for, that they may be struggling and trying to get themselves to a place where they are in a better financial state for their family. I would always just encourage you that if you are eligible for certain benefits to partake and use those benefits to make sure that you and your family are in a stable position. Like, I am not against families going to the food bank because they don't qualify for any other resources, and groceries are exponential and they're also trying to get themselves out of debt. Like, I would much rather you use the food bank so that way you can put yourself in a better financial position, even though you might have money to spend on groceries. Let's not use that money for groceries. Let's use that money to put yourself in a better spot. But you also need to be looking at all the other choices in your life to make sure that you're making the most of the financial resources that you have available to you so that way you can take care of your family. Well, I hope that you found some encouragement from this conversation, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. But if you have a question for a future episode, you can find a link where you can submit it anonymously, and we can have that conversation in a later episode. Thank you so much for hanging out, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.